Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Enter the Fat Dragon, a Hong Kong action comedy from 2020 that stars Donnie Yen. Now, some websites have claimed that this is a remake of the Sammo Hung film from 1978. Technically, that might be the case, but practically speaking, these are completely different movies, both in terms of story and style. And to be honest, I actually prefer this 2020 film over the Sammo Hung film. Now, Donnie Yen plays a police officer who, takes down some bad guys one day, but he angers his boss to the point where he is demoted to work in the evidence room for a while. And on top of that, he has a falling out and basically breaks up with his fiance. So, because of all this, he develops some bad eating and living habits which results in him gaining a significant amount of weight. Now, luckily for him, he's given a chance to redeem himself when he is sent to Japan on a crime case, with the promise of being transferred out of the evidence room if he succeeds. And he's assisted by a Japanese cop and a translator who hope to take down a yakuza boss. Now, the title of the film itself may seem derogatory nowadays, but there was a review that I read on a website called Asian Film Strike that describes the tone of this film very nicely, so I'm going to quote them here. Quote, "Enter the Fat Dragon is much closer in spirit to Sammo Hung's films, in which fatness mostly means added joviality and is no impediment to fighting prowess. It indeed manages a nice middle of the road, avoiding both fat-shaming and nonsensical political correctness," unquote. And yes, I agree with that description. This is actually a pretty charming movie, surprisingly. The comedy, it gets silly. The comedy does get silly, okay? But I think it works overall. I like the bank robbery gag in the early stages involving the toy police car. There's a funny scene that references a few of Donnie's prior action films that's pretty funny. There's a scene that compares the loudness of the Hong Kong police station with the quietness of the Japanese police station. So there's kind of a cultural gag there. There are a few romantic comedy-style jokes during the final half hour that I liked. One of the supporting actresses, Jessica John, is very charming in her role as like the translator. She gets a decent amount of screen time, and I really liked her in this because her jokes are more like dry and witty, like one-liners and stuff, which kind of helps to balance out the style of comedy a little bit. Although her character is the worst helicopter pilot of all time. And after you see the film, you'll know that. And then we get Naoto Takanaka in a small supporting role as well, and he's always funny. So, I do think some of the jokes in this movie don't land, but a lot of them do. I thought it was effective. What about the action? I always ask this in my reviews. What about the action? Well, the risk with action comedies at times is that the filmmakers, sometimes they just get lazy with the action design and just play everything for laughs. It's like, why do we got to put effort into the action? It's just a comedy. We'll just laugh it off. Just do something stupid. And to be honest, going into this film, I was expecting something like Big Brother, the Donnie Yen film from 2018 that I never even bothered to review on my channel and never bothered to add to my physical media collection because it was decent. That was more like a drama, comedy, action flick. But, there were a few decent action scenes, but they were short-lived. And the film was kind of ridiculous dramatically when you think about it. So it's like, that was kind of what I was expecting going into this Enter the Fat Dragon. Because I assumed that it would play up the laughs and play down the fights. I was wrong. I was wrong. The action in this movie is surprisingly plentiful and of a good quality, with some creative choreography and some hard-hitting stuff in here. Some of the stuntmen earn their pay, as I like to say. So just give you a quick rundown of some of the action you can expect. The opening action sequence starts at the 7-minute mark. You don't even have to wait long. Donnie visits a bank to run an errand for his fiance, and bad guys show up. There's some fighting in the bank. It transitions to a fight inside of a speeding van. It's a fun scene to open the film. And then you set up the plot. And then near like the 35-minute mark, there's a one versus many tangle with Donnie. That scene's pretty creative because he spends much of his time avoiding the bad guys. it sounds disappointing, but I liked it. It's quite different, and he's very nimble. Like, he's scaling, like, sides of buildings and, like, jumping around and stuff, and he tries to, like, I guess, like, maneuver them into trapping themselves. It's actually a pretty solid scene. The beginning of that scene, though, there's a little kid, maybe like, I don't know how little he is, 12, 13, 14 years old, I don't know. He's played by Chaney Lin, who breaks out a few awesome moves, but he's not used for the rest of the film. That kind of disappointed me, because the kid, like, starts breaking out these moves. You're like, what the heck is this? This kid's awesome. But then he doesn't do anything the rest of the movie, really. He just shows up as, like, kind of cameo. So, I would have liked to have seen more with him, but he's apparently a Taekwondo champion in real life, so, maybe we'll see him in the future. But that scene was cool, because I liked how different it was. Then, near the 1 hour mark, the action just kicks up to another level, okay? We get another one versus many tangle with Donnie, but this one is more traditional. It has, a lot more striking and fighting involved. Feels like something you'd see in a Jackie Chan movie, though. It has a really hard infusion of comedy into the fighting itself. And the choreography is pretty well thought out and intricate. Uses the surrounding environment and some random objects. The strikes are pretty hard-hitting, too. Stuntmen are getting thrown all over the place. I thought it was a solid scene. I really liked that scene. And then after that, during the second half, we get another one versus many fight, set on, like, rooftops. Not quite as good as that, the last one, which is in a warehouse, but it was good. And then we get the final fight, which was very satisfying. I mean, the Japanese villain is real quick. He uses a lot of speed maneuvers to kind of run around and get position on Donnie. And the finale is multiple stages, rather lengthy, a lot of fun to watch. The action in this movie is way more fun than I was expecting. In terms of recommendations on my end to improve it, obviously I wanted to see more with that kid. That kid should have been utilized more. Maybe an extra fight during the opening hour I would have liked to have seen. And Philip Ng has a short cameo. Like, I don't understand why this guy consistently gets underutilized in these movies. Like, you got Philip Ng in the movie, just put him as like a bodyguard of the bad guy and have him at least have a few good set pieces, maybe against Donnie. You know what I mean? Have him be like the lead bodyguard, and they don't do that, which is kind of disappointing. So those are my complaints about the action. But in terms of the, it's satisfying. There's not a lot to complain about. I like the Japanese yakuza as the bad guys. The main villain, kind of generic in personality. The actor does a good job, though. I liked him. The plot gives the filmmakers an excuse to give us lots of colorful Japanese urban environments. You get to see some kabukicho and tuna market scenes. However, while watching the film, I got the impression that these were sets that were built. You know what I mean? I got the impression from that they were sets. Especially the finale on Tokyo Tower, I'm almost certain was a set. But, like, even some of the other stuff, like in Kabukicho and the tuna market, they just felt like sets to me. But I couldn't confirm online if this was actually shot in Japan or not. So, but either way, I think that the sets are really nice, or the actual locations are really nice. Very colorful. This is a very colorful film. I like films that are colorful. It just adds an extra visual, it's eye candy. It helps you get through it. Script writing is kind of weak in a traditional sense. Some absurd coincidences, like Donnie taking the same plane flight to Japan as his former fiance, that she happens to be on the same plane flight, and she happens to be working for the bad guy. You know what I mean? It's just like, a traditional critic would just rip that apart. But it's an action comedy that's good at action and good at comedy, so I really don't care that much. I think Donnie should do more action comedies. I think he should. I think he's good at these movies. I've discussed before on this channel that, a lot of people nowadays like Donnie Yen as an actor because of the Ip Man films and a few of the films he did in the U.S., but historically, Donnie has had the propensity to mug out at the camera and overact in a number of his films. See Dragon Tiger Gate is a perfect example. But he's really good at being, like, intentionally goofy. You know, he was even good in that crappy Monkey King film he was in. He was the best part of that film. I think he did a good job as the Monkey King. You know, kind of an odd performance, or odd character that he kind of nailed. And in Enter the Fat Dragon, he does a good job of just balancing things out, not being too annoying, you know what I mean, and creating almost a likable character along the way. I would like to see him do more stuff like this. In fact, if he wanted to do a sequel to this, I would look forward to it. I would. Check out the outtakes after the ending credits. Donnie pulls off some crazy dance moves that are pretty hilarious. I mean, Enter the Fat Dragon was more entertaining than I was expecting. I'd be really interested in seeing what other people think about this film. I really like this. I would go so far as to say that, you know, I'm going to rewatch this film fairly regularly in the future as part of my Donnie Yen rotation. I almost can't believe I'm saying that. But yeah, it's currently available on Region 3 DVD with English subtitles. And I think it's going to get a US physical media release on July 14th. So if you want to wait for the US release, you can do that. I don't think it's available streaming yet. So look out for this one. I thought that this was a fun movie. And as always, we'll see you next time.